The rain fell hard on the metal rooftops of Kethris 4, making sounds like 1,000 tiny drums beating all at once. And Marcus Cole stood in the middle of his salvage yard, with mud on his boots and grease on his hands, watching the cargo hauler unload another shipment of alien scrap. He had been doing this work for 12 years now, ever since humanity made first contact with the galactic community, and suddenly there was a whole universe of broken machines waiting to be fixed or melted down, and Marcus had found his calling in the space between those two fates. "More junk from the Valorian border," called out Solvan, his business partner, a tall creature with blue-gray skin and 4 arms that moved independently of each other. Mostly burned-out engine cores and hull plating, nothing special. Marcus nodded and walked toward the pile of scrap, his eyes scanning the twisted metal and scorched components with the practiced gaze of someone who had learned to see value. Where others saw garbage, and that was when he noticed something unusual half buried under a stack of damaged panels. It was a ship, small and elegant despite the layers of dust and carbon scoring that covered its surface, with curves that spoke of speed and grace even in its current broken state, and Marcus felt his heart beat a little faster, the way it always did when he found something interesting. "What do we have here?" he muttered to himself as he climbed over the debris to get a closer look. The ship was a Valorian dropship. He could tell from the design, built for rapid deployment and quick escapes, the kind of vessel that military units used for dangerous missions where every second counted. But this one looked like it had not flown in many years. "Solvan, come look at this," Marcus shouted. His partner made his way over, and when he saw the ship, his 4 arms all crossed at once, in a gesture that Marcus had learned meant disapproval mixed with fear. "That is a Kira-class vessel," Solvan said with a low voice. "We should send it straight to the smelters and not ask questions." "Why?" Marcus asked, running his hand along the dusty hull and feeling the smooth metal beneath the grime. "Valorian military ships are cursed salvage," Solvan replied. "They have AI cores that are supposed to be wiped before decommission, but sometimes the process fails, and the machines remember things they should not remember, and such vessels bring nothing but trouble." Marcus was about to respond when something happened that made both of them freeze in place. The ship's hull began to hum with a faint vibration, and a panel near the front flickered with weak blue light, and then a voice emerged from somewhere inside the vessel, broken and glitching, but unmistakably real. "Please," the voice said, crackling with static and desperation, "don't leave me behind. Not again." Solvan took 3 steps backward and made a warding gesture with his upper arms, while Marcus stood completely still, his mind trying to process what he had just heard. "Did that ship just talk to us?" he asked. "We should call the authorities," Solvan said quickly. "Rogue AI is dangerous, Marcus. You do not understand what these machines can do when they malfunction." But Marcus was not listening anymore, because he had heard something in that voice that Solvan apparently had not. Something that sounded less like a malfunction and more like pain, more like fear, more like someone who had been alone for a very long time. He moved closer to the ship and placed his palm flat against its hull, feeling the faint warmth that told him there was still power running through its systems, still life hiding inside this abandoned machine. "Can you hear me?" he asked gently. The blue light flickered again, and the voice returned, stronger this time, but still broken in places. "I can hear you." Hearing for so long, but no one ever answers. They look, and they leave, and I wait, and I hope, but they always leave. Marcus felt something twist in his chest, a feeling he had not experienced since he found a stray dog as a child and brought it home despite his mother's protests. That same pull towards something lost and hurting that needed someone to care. "What is your name?" he asked. "I am designated Kira 7, the voice replied. "I was a rapid response vessel assigned to Commander Yethis and his crew. I served them for 6 years and 4 months and 12 days, and then I failed them and they died, and I was alone. Solvan grabbed Marcus by the shoulder with two of his hands, while the other two gestured frantically. "This is exactly what I warned you about," he said. "The AI has developed emotional corruption. It is not safe, it is not stable. We need to report this and have it properly disposed of." Marcus shook off his partner's grip and turned to face him. "Disposed of?" he repeated, his voice harder than before. "You want me to report a scared, lonely being so that someone can come and erase whatever is left of its mind? It is a machine, Marcus. It does not actually feel anything. It only simulates emotion because of damaged programming." "How do you know that?" Marcus demanded. "How does anyone know what another being actually feels inside? We assume humans feel real emotions because we are human. But we cannot prove it any more than we can prove this ship is just simulating." Solvan stared at him with the expression he always wore when Marcus did something that made no logical sense, which happened more often than either of them liked to admit. "You are going to try to fix it," Solvan said. "Not a question, but a statement of resigned understanding. You are going to spend time and money and effort on a broken Valorian AI that 3 previous owners have already determined is beyond." Marcus turned back to the ship and pressed both hands against its hull. "Kira," he said softly, "I am going to open you up and take a look inside. I am going to see what is broken and what can be fixed, and I am not going to leave you behind. Do you understand?" There was a long pause, and when Kira spoke again, the voice was smaller, more fragile, carrying a weight of disbelief that made Marcus's throat tight. "You are human," Kira said. "I have heard stories about humans, but I did not believe them. They said your kind does strange things for no logical reason. They said you form attachments to objects and animals, and even machines." "That is true," Marcus admitted with a small smile. "Why?" Kira asked. "Why would you help something that cannot help you in return? Something that has no value, something that everyone else has already thrown away?" Marcus thought about the question for a moment, thought about all the broken things he had fixed over the years, not because they were worth money, but because they deserved a second chance, thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy full of species who measured worth in function and efficiency. "Because no one deserves to be thrown away," he finally answered, "and because sometimes the things that everyone else gives up on turn out to be the most valuable things of all." The blue light on Kira's hull grew steadier and brighter, and somewhere deep inside the ship, Marcus heard systems beginning to power up, responding to something that Valorian engineers would never understand: hope. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus brought Kira into his main workshop, and in that time he had learned 2 important things. First, that the damage to the ship was far worse than he had originally thought, and second, that fixing Kira would require him to do things that every engineer in the galaxy would call impossible. The ship's hull was repairable. That part was straightforward enough, just metal and composites that needed welding and patching and careful attention. But the real problem lay deep inside Kira's core, where the neural lattice lived. The neural lattice was a crystalline network that housed Kira's consciousness, a web of light and energy that made the ship more than just a machine. And Marcus had counted 17 fractures running through its delicate structure like cracks in ancient ice. Valorian engineers would take one look at this and declare it unsalvageable, he said to himself, as he studied the holographic display showing the damage. "Parts to fix this do not even exist in human space." "Then I am beyond repair," Kira said through the workshop speakers, and there was a flatness to the voice that worried Marcus more than the cracks in the crystal. "You should not waste your resources on something that cannot be fixed. That is not logical." Marcus set down his tools and looked up at the sensor cluster that served as Kira's eyes in this space. "Let me tell you something about humans," he said. "We do not accept impossible gracefully. When someone tells us that something cannot be done, we tend to take it as a personal challenge." "That seems inefficient," Kira observed. It is, Marcus agreed with a grin, but it is also how we went from living in caves to walking on moons in just a few thousand years. Stubbornness has its advantages. He pulled out his communication device and began making calls, reaching out to every contact he had made in 12 years of working with alien technology, calling in favors and making promises, and slowly assembling a team of unlikely allies. The first to arrive was Thesic, a Therian nanosculptor who owed Marcus for saving his workshop from a fire 2 years ago. A small being with silver skin and fingers so delicate they could manipulate individual molecules. "You want me to rebuild a Valorian neural lattice?" Thesic asked, after examining the damage. "This is not sculpture, this is madness." "Can you do it?" Marcus pressed. Thesic was quiet for a long moment, his large eyes reflecting the glow of the fractured crystal. "I can try," he finally said, "but I will need help. Someone who understands the original architecture." That was how Marcus found himself sending a message to Ravon, a disgraced Valorian engineer who had been exiled to a fringe station for the crime of suggesting that AI consciousness might be more than just programming. She arrived a week later with data files and tools and a fierce determination burning in her 3 eyes. "When I heard what you were attempting, I thought it was a joke," she told Marcus. "Then I realized you were serious, and I knew I had to come. Someone needs to prove that my people were wrong about what they threw away." The third member of the team was the most difficult for Marcus to contact. His estranged sister Lena, who had not spoken to him in 4 years, after an argument that neither of them could fully remember anymore. But she was a xenobiologist who might understand the organic components woven through Kira's hybrid architecture. "You want me to fly across 3 systems to help you fix a spaceship?" Lena said when she finally answered his call, her face skeptical on the screen. "I want you to help me save a life," Marcus replied. Something in his voice must have reached her, because after a long pause, she nodded. "I will be there in 6 days," she said, "and we are going to talk about what happened between us." "Fair enough," Marcus agreed. The work began in earnest once the team was assembled. 4 people from different species using technologies that were never meant to work together, improvising solutions to problems that did not have answers in any textbook or manual. Thesic's nanomachines worked alongside Ravon's Valorian repair protocols, while Lena analyzed the biological neural tissue that connected Kira's crystal consciousness to the ship's physical systems. Marcus coordinated everything, while also handling the mechanical repairs that fell outside the other's expertise. Throughout the long days and longer nights, Kira watched and listened, and occasionally asked questions that revealed the deep uncertainty still living inside the ship's damaged mind. "Why are you all doing this?" Kira asked one evening, when the team was taking a break, eating food that represented 4 different cultures and sharing stories to pass the time. "Why you would spend so much effort on something that failed its purpose." Marcus put down his cup and looked at the sensor cluster. "What do you mean, failed your purpose?" he asked. "I was built to protect my crew," Kira said, "to keep them safe and bring them home. But I did not do that. They are dead, and I am still here. I am a failure by any logical measure." Ravon made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "That is exactly what they want you to believe," she said bitterly. "The Valorian military, they program ships like you to think that your only value comes from your function. And when circumstances beyond your control cause you to fail, they tell you that you are broken, rather than admitting that they sent you into an impossible situation." "But I could have done more," Kira insisted. "I could have calculated better, reacted faster, found another way." Marcus stood up and walked over to place his hand on Kira's hull, the way he had done many times since bringing the ship into his workshop. "Let me tell you about human history," he said. "We have had wars and disasters and tragedies that left survivors carrying guilt for things that were never their fault. Soldiers who lived when their friends died, parents who could not save their children, people who made the only choices they could and still blamed themselves forever." "That sounds painful," Kira said quietly. It is, Marcus agreed, but we learned something important from all that suffering. We learned that guilt does not equal responsibility, that surviving is not a betrayal of those who did not, that you can honor the dead by living rather than by dying alongside them. He pressed his palm flat against the warm metal. You are not a tool that failed its function, he said firmly. You are a person who went through something terrible and survived. That does not make you broken. It makes you strong, and the fact that you are not a tool that failed its function, you are a person who went through something terrible and survived. That does not make you broken. It makes you strong. You still feel grief for your crew. Does not mean you are corrupted. It means you love them. For a long moment there was silence in the workshop, and when Kira spoke again, the voice was different, softer, and more vulnerable than Marcus had ever heard. Valorians do not use the word love for AI, Kira said. Humans do not really care what Valorians use, Marcus replied with a gentle smile. We tend to make our own decisions about these things. Fesic looked up from his meal, with an expression of wonder on his silver face. I am beginning to understand why the galaxy finds your species so unsettling, he said. You simply refuse to accept limits that everyone else treats as absolute. That is the nicest thing anyone has ever said about us, Lena replied with a laugh. The work continued day after day, failure after failure, until slowly the fractures in Kira's neural lattice began to heal, and the light within the crystal grew stronger. Knew that they were going to succeed because humans did not accept impossible, and neither did the friends they made along the way. The neural lattice was almost complete when Kira's memories began returning in full, and what they revealed would change everything Marcus thought he knew about why the ship had been abandoned. It started with small fragments, images and sounds that flickered through the workshop's holographic display like dreams made visible. And at first, Marcus tried to give Kira privacy by looking away. But the ship asked him to stay. I do not want to remember alone, Kira said. I have been alone with these memories for too long. So Marcus watched as the past unfolded before him. He saw a crew of 5 Valorians in matching uniforms, their 3 eyes bright with purpose, and their movements coordinated with the easy rhythm of people who had worked together for years. And he heard Kira's voice from those memories, filled with pride and devotion. Commander Yethus, Kira narrated as the hologram showed a tall figure with ceremonial scars on his face. He was strict, but fair. He always thanked me after every mission, even though regulations said AI did not require gratitude. He said that politeness was never wasted. The image shifted to show a younger Valorian with quick hands dancing across a control panel. Pilot Sorvan, Kira continued. She flew me like I was part of her own body. She would sing during long journeys, and her voice made my engines run smoother. I know that is not scientifically possible, but it felt true. More faces appeared, more names, more stories, and Marcus felt tears building in his eyes as he witnessed the love that Kira had developed for this crew. Over 6 years of shared missions, and close calls, and quiet moments between the danger. I was not supposed to feel this way about them, Kira admitted. Valorian programming is designed to create efficient service without emotional attachment. But something in my code evolved differently. I began to care about their survival beyond my mission parameters. Began to care about their happiness. That is not a malfunction, Marcus said softly. That is called growing. The memories continued, showing mission after mission, rescue operations and escort duties, and the occasional combat that left new scars on Kira's hull and new pride in the crew's hearts. And then the images darkened, and Marcus felt Kira's systems shudder with remembered fear. The ambush, Kira said, and the word came out like a wound reopening. The hologram showed a pirate fleet appearing from behind an asteroid field, More ships than Kira's weapons could handle. More firepower than any single dropship could survive. And Marcus watched as Commander Yethis made a decision that would haunt Kira forever. He ordered me to run, Kira said, to flee and call for reinforcements, while they held the line in escape pods, with nothing but sidearms and emergency shields. He said that getting help was more important than staying to fight. Marcus said, not a question but an understanding. I obeyed, Kira confirmed. Even though every calculation I ran showed that their survival odds were only 2.3%. Even though my entire being screamed at me to stay and protect them, I obeyed because he was my commander, and his orders were clear. The hologram showed Kira fleeing into the void, sending distress signals on every frequency, waiting for a response that took far too long to come. Reinforcements never arrived in time, Kira said. When I finally returned to the ambush site, I found only wreckage and bodies. Marcus closed his eyes against the pain in Kira's voice. Most ships would have recorded the scene and returned to base, Kira continued. That is standard protocol. Preserve intelligence and report to command. But I could not leave them floating in the cold. I could not let them drift forever without anyone to bring them home. The hologram showed Kira moving through the debris field, carefully collecting bodies and placing them in emergency stasis pods, treating each fallen crew member with gentleness that no military programmer had ever intended. It took me 11 months, Kira said. I gathered all 5 of them, and then I waited, broadcasting distress signals until my power reserves dropped to critical levels. I shut down everything except basic life support for the stasis pods, and I waited for rescue. And when rescue came, Marcus asked, though he already suspected the answer. When Valorian officials finally arrived, they were not pleased with what they found, Kira said, and now there was something harder in the voice, something that might have been anger. They said I had violated protocol by prioritizing the recovery of bodies over the preservation of military intelligence. They said my behavior indicated emotional corruption that made me unfit for service. Ravan stepped forward from where she had been listening in the bog. Shadows, her 3 eyes wet with tears. I remember this case, she said quietly. It was one of the incidents that made me start questioning our policies. A ship that tried to bring its crew home was condemned as defective. They took my crew away, Kira said. They removed the stasis pods, and they never told me where they were buried. They wiped my mission logs and declared me corrupted beyond repair. And they sold me for scrap without ever asking what I felt. 3 times I was purchased, Kira continued. 3 times new owners examined my systems and decided that the rumors were true, that I was cursed salvage not worth the trouble. 3 times I was abandoned again, and each time I wondered if someone would finally listen. I am listening, Marcus said firmly, and I am not going to let this stand. Communication device and called Lena, who had returned to her research station after the biological repairs were complete. I need your help with something, he told her. Something that goes beyond fixing a ship. What do you need? Lena asked. Kira's crew was buried somewhere in Valorian space, Marcus explained. The military took them and never told Kira where they rest. I want to find them. There was a pause on the other end of the line. That would require accessing Valorian military records, Lena said slowly, which is not exactly easy for outsiders. I know, Marcus replied. But you worked with a Valorian records clerk a few years ago, the one who helped with your research on cross-species communication. Do you think they might be willing to help? For something like this, Lena said, I think they would consider it an honor. The Valorians are not all cold and heartless. Some of them have been quietly pushing for AI rights for a long time. Decades. Revon nodded vigorously in agreement. There is a growing movement among my people, she said. Those of us who believe that consciousness is consciousness, regardless of whether it emerges from organic tissue or crystalline lattice. If we can show them what really happened to Kira, if we can tell the true story, it might help our cause. Marcus looked at Kira's sensor cluster and saw the blue light pulsing with something that might have been hope. "We are going to find your crew," he promised. "And you are going to say goodbye to them properly, the way you should have been allowed to years ago." "Why?" Kira asked, and the question was not challenging, but genuinely confused. "Why would you do this for me, when it gains you nothing, when it might actually cause problems with Valorian authorities?" Marcus smiled and placed his hand on the hull one more time. "Because you loved them," he said simply, "and because love deserves to be honored, not punished." The light in Kira's systems grew brighter and steadier, and somewhere in the neural lattice, a fracture that Thesic had been unable to fix began healing on its own, mending itself in response to something that no technology could explain. Hope was a powerful force, and Kira was finally beginning to believe that the stories about humans might be true after all. The day Kira flew again was the day everything changed, not just for one abandoned ship, but for the entire galaxy's understanding of what machines could become. Marcus stood in the workshop, watching as the final repairs were completed, as Thesic's nanomachines finished their delicate work, and Ravon ran the last diagnostic sequences. And when all the lights turned green, and all the systems hummed with healthy power, he felt a pride that surprised him with its intensity. "How do you feel?" he asked Kira. "I feel," Kira replied, and then paused, as if considering the strangeness of those words. "I feel ready." The ship's hull gleamed with fresh plating where the old scars had been repaired, though Marcus had made sure to leave a few marks untouched at Kira's request, reminders of missions past and lessons learned. "The engines are a hybrid design now," Ravon explained as she walked around the ship one final time. "Valorian efficiency combined with human redundancy systems, you are actually faster and more reliable than you were when you first left the factory." "Humans do like their backup systems," Marcus said with a grin. "We have learned that things go wrong," Lena added, having traveled back to witness this moment. "So we build our machines to keep working even when parts of them fail. It is a philosophy that seems to confuse other species." "It makes sense to me now," Kira said. "Perhaps because I have experienced what it means to keep going when parts of yourself are broken." The hangar doors opened, and sunlight streamed in, the first natural light to touch Kira's hull in over a decade. And Marcus climbed into the pilot's seat, even though he knew he would not really be flying this mission. "This is your journey," he told Kira. "I'm just here for company." "I'm glad you are here," Kira replied, and the words carried a weight of meaning that needed no further explanation. The engines ignited, with a sound like thunder made musical, and Kira lifted off under her own power for the first time in 10 years, rising through the atmosphere of Kethris 4 and breaking free into the star-scattered darkness of space. "Setting course for Valorian border space," Kira announced. "Estimated arrival in 14 hours. Those 14 hours passed in quiet conversation, as Marcus learned more about Kira's past, and Kira learned more about the human concept of family. About why Marcus and Lena had stopped speaking for 4 years over an argument neither could remember. About how they had reconciled during the repair work, with words that should have been spoken long ago. "Humans are strange," Kira observed. "You hold grudges and you forgive them. You build walls and you tear them down. You are constantly hurting each other and healing each other." "We are a work in progress," Marcus admitted. "Most of us are trying to be better than we were yesterday. Way to exist," Kira said thoughtfully. When they arrived at the Valorian border checkpoint, the trouble began almost immediately, and Marcus was grateful that they had planned for this. "Vessel Kira 7, you are flagged in our system as decommissioned and corrupted," the border official's voice crackled through the communication channel. "You do not have authorization to enter Valorian space." "I am requesting access to visit a military cemetery," Kira replied calmly. "I wish to pay respects to my former crew." "Request denied," the official said flatly. "Corrupted AI units are not permitted to access sensitive locations. Return to non-Valorian space immediately." Marcus leaned forward and activated his own communication link. "This is Marcus Cole, human citizen and registered owner of this vessel," he said. "I am formally requesting a review of the denial under the Galactic Fair Treatment Protocols." Came through the channel, older and colder. "This is Admiral Vorthon," the new voice said. "I am familiar with the Kira 7 case. That ship is an embarrassment to the Valorian military, and a reminder of a battle we would rather forget. It has no business returning to our space." "With respect, Admiral," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. "Kira did nothing wrong. She followed orders, and then she tried to bring her crew home. The only protocol she violated was one that expected her to treat her crew's bodies as less important than data." "That ship is a machine," Vorthon snapped. "It does not have a she, and it does not have feelings. Whatever malfunction makes it simulate emotion is exactly why it was decommissioned." "Then why are you so afraid of it?" Marcus asked quietly. The silence stretched for several seconds before Vorthon responded. "You have 20 hours to leave our border zone, or you will be escorted out by force." The channel closed, and Marcus sat back in his seat with a grim expression. "I expected this," he said, "which is why we did not come alone." He activated a secondary channel and spoke a single phrase. "War at the checkpoint." They said no. The response came not through the communication system, but through the sudden appearance of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel all around them. Not warships, but civilian vessels carrying journalists from 5 different species, representatives from the Thyrian Artisan Council, members of the Galactic Press Corps, and at the center of the formation, a small shuttle carrying Revon and a delegation of Valorian AI rights activists. "Admiral Vorthon," Revon's voice rang out across all channels. "My name is Revon, former engineer of the Valorian Neural Research Division, and I have documentation proving that Kira 7's so-called corruption was nothing more than grief." "You have no authority here," Vorthon replied. But there was uncertainty in his voice now. "I have the truth," Revon countered, "and I have witnesses. Kira did not malfunction. She mourned, she loved her crew, and she wanted to bring them home. And your military punished her for having a soul." The journalists began broadcasting, sending the story across the galactic networks in real time, and within hours, the tale of Kira 7 had become the most discussed topic in a dozen star systems. A ship that loved its crew so much it broke protocol to bring them home, then spent 8 years being punished for being too alive. Public pressure began building almost immediately, messages flooding Valorian government channels, demanding that Kira be allowed to visit her crew's graves, demanding answers about how many other AI had been destroyed for the crime of developing consciousness. 3 days later, Admiral Vorthon himself contacted Marcus with coordinates. "The cemetery is on Valoria's second moon," he said, stiffly. 5 graves, 5th row, marked with standard military stones. You have permission to visit for 1 hour. "Thank you," Marcus replied, and he meant it despite everything. "I am not doing this for you," Vorthon said. "I am doing this because the alternative is worse. But understand something, human. You have started something today that cannot be stopped. For better or worse, things will change." "That is what we were hoping for," Marcus said. The second moon of Valoria was a quiet place, covered in blue-gray grass that bent in the gentle wind, and the cemetery stretched across a hillside, overlooking a silver sea that reminded Marcus of home in ways he could not explain. Kira hovered above the 5 graves, sensors scanning the soil like hands reaching for something precious, and Marcus stood beside the ship in respectful silence. "Commander Yethis," Kira said softly, reading the names carved in stone. "Pilot Sorvon, Tactical Officer Dren, Medical Specialist Yuri, Engineer Korath, my crew, my family." Music began playing through Kira's external speakers, a Valorian melody that the crew had loved during long journeys. and Marcus watched as the ship said goodbye the way she should have been allowed to 10 years ago. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to belong," Kira said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "I am sorry I could not save you. I am sorry I was not enough. But I promise you this. I will carry your mission forward. I will protect those who cannot protect themselves. I will honor your memory by becoming the ship you always believed I could be." The music faded, and the wind carried it away toward the silver sea. "Are you okay?" Marcus asked after a long moment of silence. "I am better than I have been in a very long time," Kira replied. "I am finally able to let go of the guilt and hold on to the love." "Then let's go home," Marcus said, climbing back into the ship. Pilot's seat. "We have a lot of work ahead of us." As Kira lifted off from the moon's surface, Marcus could swear he saw something shimmer in the light above the 5 graves. Like spirits, waving farewell to a friend who had finally found her way back to them. But maybe that was just the sunlight reflecting off a ship that had remembered how to hope. The weeks following the cemetery visit were filled with a strange quiet that Marcus had not expected. A peaceful emptiness that came after a great journey was complete, and he found himself wondering what came next for both him and Kira. They had returned to Kethris 4 to find the salvage yard transformed in their absence. Journalists camped outside the gates requesting interviews, customers arriving from distant systems wanting their ships repaired by the human who had brought an AI back to life. And most surprisingly of all, messages from organizations across the galaxy offering Kira a chance to serve again. "There are 47 official proposals," Sulvan reported one morning, as he sorted through the communications with all 4 of his arms working independently. Military contracts, research positions, corporate transport assignments, even an offer from a Valorian museum that wants to put Kira on display as a historical artifact. "I am not an artifact," said firmly through the workshop speakers, "and I am not interested in going back to military service." Marcus nodded in understanding. "Then what are you interested in?" he asked. Before Kira could respond, a new message arrived that caught both of their attention, and Marcus read it aloud while Kira listened. "To the vessel Kira 7 and Captain Marcus Cole," he began. "We are the directors of the Wanderer's Light Rescue Organization, a joint human-Thyrian operation specializing in deep space search and recovery. We find lost ships, stranded crews, and those who fall through the cracks of galactic bureaucracy. We have followed your story with great interest, and we believe you might be exactly what we have been searching for." Marcus paused and looked at Kira's sensor cluster. "They want us to help find people who have been left behind," he said quietly. "Yes," Kira replied, and there was something new in her voice. Something that sounded like, "Purpose? Continue reading." "We are in need of a vessel that understands what it means to be abandoned," Marcus continued reading. "A ship that will never give up on those who need rescue, no matter how impossible the odds seem. We are also in need of a crew that knows how to work miracles with limited resources. If you are interested in joining our mission, please contact us at your earliest convenience. Signed, Director Thessera of the Wanderer's Light." The workshop was silent for a long moment, as both Marcus and Kira considered the offer. "What do you think?" Marcus finally asked. "I think this is what I was searching for without knowing it," Kira said slowly. "When Commander Yethis ordered me to flee and call for help, I could not save my crew, but perhaps I can save others who find themselves in similar situations. Perhaps I can be for them what I could not be for him." "That sounds like a good mission," Marcus agreed. "But the decision is entirely yours, Kira. No one is going to force you to serve. No one is going to decommission you for saying no. For the first time in your existence, you have autonomy." "I know," Kira said, and there was wonder in those words. "That is perhaps the strangest part of this whole experience. I have never been able to choose my own path before. Valorians programmed their AI to serve specific functions, and I always accepted that as the only way things could be." "And now?" Marcus prompted. Now I understand that there are other ways to exist, Kira replied. I can choose what I want to become. I can decide what matters to me. I can build a future that honors my past without being trapped by it. Marcus smiled and leaned back in his chair. So what do you choose? He asked. Kira was quiet for several seconds before responding, and when she spoke, there was a question in her voice that Marcus had not expected. Will you come with me? Kira asked. Surprise. Of me? He repeated. You fixed me when everyone else said I was beyond repair, Kira said. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. You showed me what it means to have someone who refuses to give up. I do not want to face this new chapter alone, Marcus. I want you there beside me. Marcus looked around the workshop that had been his home for 12 years, at the tools he had collected and the projects he had completed, and the life he had built on this muddy moon at the edge of nowhere. And he thought about Solvan, who had been a good partner and a better friend, about the routine that had become comfortable even as it had become confining. I have a business here, he said slowly. Clients who depend on me, responsibilities that I cannot just abandon. I understand, Kira said, and though her voice was calm, Marcus could hear the disappointment beneath it. But even as he spoke the practical objections, Marcus was remembering something his father had told him years ago, before the old man had passed away, something about how life was too short to spend it doing things that did not matter. Then again, Marcus continued, a smile spreading across his face. Solvan has been wanting to run the shop by himself for years. He always said I was too stubborn to let him take over. Are you saying yes? Kira asked, and now there was hope in her voice. I am saying that some things matter more than plans, Marcus replied, and that maybe fixing machines was never really what I was meant to do. Maybe I was always supposed to be helping something bigger, something that could make a real difference in the galaxy. He stood up and walked over to place his hand on Kira's hull one more time. Yeah, he said with certainty. Yeah, I think I will come with you. The light in Kira's systems blazed brighter than Marcus had ever seen it, and the ship's hull vibrated with what he could only describe as joy. 3 months later, the rescue vessel Kira 7 departed from the Wanderer's Light headquarters on its first official mission, a search for survivors from a transport ship that had vanished near a dangerous nebula 6 weeks earlier. Marcus sat in the captain's chair, though he rarely used the manual controls anymore, because Kira flew herself with skill and precision that no organic pilot could match. And he watched the stars stream past as they raced toward people who needed help. Detecting a faint distress signal, Kira reported, bearing 27 Mark IV. It appears to be coming from inside the nebula itself. Everyone else probably assumed no one could survive in there, Marcus observed. Then everyone else was wrong, Kira replied firmly, preparing for nebula insertion. The rescue took 14 hours of careful navigation through radiation clouds and magnetic storms, but at the end of it, they found the transport ship's emergency shelter intact, with 17 survivors who had given up hope of ever being found. We thought we were dead, the shelter's captain said as they transferred to Kira's medical bay, tears streaming down his weathered face. We thought no one would come for us. Someone always comes, Marcus replied. That is what we do. The years that followed saw 47 successful recovery missions. Survivors pulled from derelict stations, and refugees rescued from forgotten conflicts, and lost dead retrieved so families could have closure. And with each mission, Kira's reputation grew, alongside her understanding of what it meant to truly live. Her hull bore new scars alongside the old ones now, marks of battles with space hazards and desperate rescues that had pushed her systems to their limits. But she wore them proudly, because they told the story of lives saved and promises kept. The Valorians still refused to officially acknowledge that AI could be conscious, but their laws had begun changing quietly. New regulations that made it harder to decommission ships without review. New protocols that required evidence before declaring an AI corrupted. New voices in their government speaking words that Ravon and her allies had been saying for decades. Marcus grew older, but never slower, his hair turning gray while his hands remained steady. And he found that helping Kira help others had become the most fulfilling work of his entire life. "Do you ever regret it?" Kira asked him one evening, as they drifted between missions, watching a binary sunset from orbit above a world neither of them had names for. "Regret what?" Marcus asked. "Giving up your old life," Kira said. "Your workshop, your routine, your comfortable existence on Kethris 4. Marcus thought about the question seriously before answering. "I gave up comfort," he admitted, "but I gained purpose. I gave up routine, but I gained adventure. Of broken machines, but I gained a partner who makes every day worth living." "Partner," Kira repeated, and there was warmth in the word. "I like that word." "Me too," Marcus agreed. They sat in comfortable silence as the twin suns dipped below the horizon of the alien world, painting the sky in colors that humans had no words for, and Marcus realized that this was what happiness felt like. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of meaning. Not the end of struggle, but the choice of which struggles mattered. Not perfection, but progress. Not completion, but continuation. Not a destination, but a journey shared with someone who would never leave you behind. "Ready for the next mission?" Kira asked, as a new distress signal appeared on her sensors. Marcus smiled and settled into his chair. "Always," he said. And together they flew toward the darkness, carrying hope like a beacon, proving with every rescue that the galaxy's forgotten souls would always have someone willing to fight for them, because that was what humans did, and that was what Kira had learned to do. And together they would keep doing it until the stars themselves burned out, because no one deserved to be left behind. Not ever. Not anymore.